School for Student Life and NDA graduate of the Green class of 2005. I'd like to take a moment to share with you why each of these classes are so unique and wonderful to me. What makes the Red class so special? They get the job done. Within minutes of sending out this assignment, asking them for videos about their class, I had a member of the Red Class Council sending me a clarifying question, and by the end of the day, someone had already submitted their videos. That's the Red Class. Enthusiastic, hardworking, driven, and full of leaders. I can't wait to see what they'll do as upperclasswomen next year.
Hello, I'm Kathy from the Red Class. Our class is always motivated to participate in school activities, and we always bring out our full energy to enjoy our NDA high school experience. You will see the Red Class cheering loudly at pep rallies, especially on NDA Day. Our class also makes a genuine effort to be friendly and maintain connections with everyone. We have all branched out and gone beyond just being friends with people from our middle school. Everyone has come to have their own group of NDA sisters to rely on, which I think shows our class's kindness and efforts to make sure no one feels left out. Our class has provided me with loads of support and encouragement. Whenever I need help with a personal problem or a school assignment, my class is always there for me, and I feel never afraid to ask for help. Our class has also helped me grow as a person. I've learned so much from my peers and how I can change some aspects of myself to become a better person. Our class continues to inspire me, and I'm so grateful to be part of the Red Class of 2022.
Hi, my name is Hannah Doswasley, and as sophomore and freshman class president of class of 2022, the Red Class, my favorite thing about our class is definitely our school participation and our school spirit. When it comes to NDA days, activity days, spirit rallies, and even dances, I can say our class has a lot of participation, and that's one thing I love. We're not always going to come to an agreement, but definitely our class will always find a solution where we contribute everyone's ideas and everyone's different ways of problem solving and problem thinking, and that's what makes our class so awesome. Thank you.
My name's Elisa Mcdermott. I'm on the sophomore class council, and I love our class because we are always so energetic, especially on NDA day when we can compete against our rival classes. And we also put our creative talents together on that day to make it extra special. We're super competitive and athletic, which makes our school sports and activities really fun. And especially at pep rallies, we can show how loud we are and how awesome we are, which is super cool.
Hello, I'm Mia Oliver, and I'm a part of the Red Class. Something that makes the Red Class so special, so great, is our large amount of school spirit, whether that be on NDA Day or any other school activities. Each and every person in my class brings something special to the NDA community, whether that be in sports or in the arts such as drama, dance, choir, drawing, and so much more. My class is very supportive of one another, and we are inclusive of everyone no matter our differences. I am so grateful to be a part of the Red Class because we uplift each other, and I really do believe that we are stronger together.
Hi, I'm Riley Johnson, a sophomore at NDA and part of the Red Class of 2022. 3 adjectives to describe our class is fun-loving, outgoing, and compassionate. We always are willing to lend a helping hand and participate in NDA school spirit events. My favorite memory of my class is definitely the past 2 NDA days. Decorating lockers, doing skits, and playing in volleyball games is how we show our Red Class school spirit. I can't wait to spend another 2 years with this amazing class. NDA and this class have already shown me the gifts of friendship, sisterhood, and showing kindness to others. I couldn't have asked for a better classmates and friends. Go Red Class of 2022!
It is my pleasure to announce our next speaker, Catherine Duddy Wood, class of 1974. After graduating from Notre Dame Academy, Kathy went on to USC to obtain her Bachelor's of Science degree in Economics and Finance. Throughout her career, she took her passion for innovation and applied it to the world of finance. Kathy is the founder and CEO/CIO of ARC Investment Management. A true Notre Dame Academy girl at heart, Kathy has not only made a difference in the world of economics, but has also given back to her alma mater by creating and funding the Duddy Innovation Center of Excellence at NDA. The Interdisciplinary Disruptive Innovation course encourages students to study fundamental frameworks in innovation and entrepreneurship. Here to talk more about the Duddy Innovation Center of Excellence is Kathy Duddy.
Good morning and welcome to the Notre Dame Academy and ARC Invest Innovation Panel. My name is Brad Fuller and I'm the Assistant Head of School for Educational Operations at NDA. I now have the privilege of introducing our panelists. Please join me in welcoming Catherine Duddy Wood, NDA alumna of the class of 1974 and the CEO and CIO of ARC Invest, an asset management company focused on disruptive innovation. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Brad.
Brett Winton,
No, happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And Brett Winton is Director of Research at ARC Invest. Good morning, Brett. And Dr. Farhad Rostamian is the Director of the Duddy Innovation Center of Excellence here at NDA. Welcome, Farhad.
Good morning, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, Brett, and Farhad for joining us today for Making a Difference from Home. First, I'd like to ask you, Kathy, if you can provide a current example to help our community understand the field of disruptive innovation.
Well, I'd like to provide two, if I may. One that we're all very familiar with. So online retail, it doesn't sound disruptive anymore, right? But in early 2000s, when I had 3 little children, Amazon was on the scene and everyone thought it would fail because we had gone through the tech and telecom bust. It was doomed to failure. It would never earn any money because of course Walmart and Costco and Target and others would take over. Well, interestingly, in those years with those 3 little children, I put all of my Christmas on Amazon. And it didn't work that well. It really didn't. But I didn't care. I didn't have to go out of the house. That was really disruptive innovation. Fast forward to today, online retail, much bigger, of course. We know this from our own lives. But it is interesting to note that only 15% of total retail sales in the United States before this crisis were online. After this crisis, talk about disruptive innovation. The online retail as a share of total retail, we think, is going to skyrocket. Usually the sweet spot of an S-curve where a trend moves into overdrive is after 10 and 15%. So here we are in retail. If we think that traditional retail has been disrupted, we have seen nothing yet. The second example is healthcare. This virus, the coronavirus, COVID-19, we know exactly who the enemy is right now. And the reason we know medically who it is we were able to sequence the genome of this virus in 2 days. When we faced SARS in the early 2000s, it took 5 months. Can you imagine if it took more than 5 months to figure this thing out and then figure out how to make tests to fight it or to even identify it? So while I know there's been a lot of criticism about testing in this country, it has happened so much faster than it would have had we not been where we are today with DNA sequencing in the world.
Thank you so much. And since you brought up the coronavirus, Kathy, you recently wrote an article for ARC Invest entitled "The Coronavirus Innovation Gains Traction During Tumultuous Times." How do you view innovation in the context of the current pandemic moving forward?
Sure. Well, in terms of work, life moving online, I've just given you retail as a good example. But for those of you who have been stuck at home, you might be paying a lot more attention to Pinterest. Pinterest is moving into commerce. So we've got newbies coming online and they've been encouraged by this. Let's talk about education. Well, here we're on Zoom with you, and we know that Notre Dame moved its classes onto Zoom in in lightning speed time. This could not have happened 10 or 15 years ago. There's another company focused on the college level and graduate school, 2U. They have every college in the US and outside of the US clamoring to help them get their entire curriculum or a good part of it online. If we talk about work as well, Zoom, Slack, we've got Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, lots of different solutions here. Was it Facebook just announced one very recently? We think there's going to be a lot of competition in this space, but the infrastructure to support this is also very necessary. So I'm kind of giving you a sense of what we at ARC invest in. Just to give you healthcare, I gave you the sequencing, but the tests could not have occurred without advances in synthetic biology. They couldn't have been developed as quickly as they are, Abbott and Cepheid, without a company named Illumina and Twist. And then finally, another example in healthcare, telemedicine. Medicare was so fearful that the elderly would be in harm's way if they went to the doctor's office with flu symptoms, that they actually said, we will reimburse telemedicine. So Teladoc has now, its traction has accelerated enormously. And I will give one more. I think many people are surprised to learn, or were surprised to learn, that a virus super spreader out there is cash. Cash is one of the most virulent virus super spreaders, as are credit and debit cards. And so we think that digital wallets like Square's Cash App, and we think that Venmo also, peer-to-peer, that those are gaining traction. And we learned just yesterday, our analyst at ARC said that one of the recipients of an SBA loan said that Square's Cash App was the best banking experience he had ever had. He put in his application and within 1 day was approved. He's still waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks later for banks to even figure out who should make this decision. So again, we see all kinds of disruptive innovation that we do think is going to disrupt the traditional world order, like banks and like education. We're all going to have to think about doing things differently.
Just to interject for a second, not to minimize the scope and scale of the crisis that we're in, but if you imagine this same thing had happened to us 10 years before, like what that would have looked like. We all would have had, little flip Motorola Razr phones. Like I would have had to pull the desktop computer off my office desk and carry it back home. It would have been so much harder for even the portion of the economy that's still managing to turn the wheels to actually adapt to what's going on. And in some ways, I was talking to a UCLA doc the other day, a doctor at UCLA, and he was saying for 5 years we've been trying to do telemedicine, and there's so much kind of bureaucracy in the way, and suddenly we do it in 5 days, right? And so that's kind of illustrative of how, one, that it makes status quo decisions no longer acceptable. Two, that the technology is in such a ready state now that you can make the transition, really quickly, and you're kind of scrambling along the way as people are with education, but that it's even possible that, a lot of people already have laptops and iPads in their houses so that the schools are able to, cover by getting some people who don't have access to that technology, laptops, but a lot of the parent population already has sufficient access that transition can occur. We really, really, in some ways, are profoundly lucky that it happened now rather than a decade ago or 2 decades ago, that people can get delivery of groceries to their door rather than having to go, so as hard as this is, and for some people it's very hard, and for a lot, and for people that are directly exposed and have health issues, it's extremely hard. But the economy can be put on like, rest and still operate as well as it is in some way like profoundly interesting. And so then think about how much more robust kind of the whole systems will be 5 and 10 years forward, given the catalyst and accelerant this has provided to people getting onto modern platforms and technology stacks. And so that's like, if you look at kind of our investment style and the businesses that we're looking at, they've actually gone through this and are doing relatively well because they're winning share. And then people are saying, oh, well, this is going to pull forward that transition to kind of these new technologies. And so in some ways, it's very inspiring. It's like, this is like forcing us to get to the future sooner than we otherwise would. And so net measured over, 5 and 10 years, maybe this will be like net better off for people, and that you'll have a more productive economy. You'll have kind of more efficient processes in place, for families that, for instance, have a kid and previously kind of get kicked out of the workforce as they're trying to manage that kid. If people are able to incorporate work from home more readily afterwards, like it could make kind of parenting and working at the same time something that's more acceptable within society. That's a huge net loss in the US right now of how do you raise a family and stay connected to the workplace and everything else. So you can imagine there's both cultural and technological shifts that actually will make us more robust going forward to both disruption and to some of the life disruption that happens along the way in anybody's life.
So Brad, if I could just introduce Brett a little more formally and completely, just so people understand what a terrific director of research we have. Brett is an MIT engineer by training. And when he left school, left MIT, he decided he wanted to reform or transform the California educational system. And maybe he can talk a little bit about that, but clearly that did not happen. And he ended up in business development in small technology startups. We have a very young team, that many of them they've just been, they're recent graduates from college. So with that experience, he is a wonderful director of research. Engineer, breaking things down and understanding them, real interest in education and teaching, and startups and technology. He knows what these companies go through. And so this idea of the acceleration of innovation much faster than otherwise would have been the case is especially exciting to Brett and to us with our portfolios.
Right.
Well, thank you.
If I could interject on the previous conversation. So let's not forget the infrastructure. So 5-10 years ago, we did not have the cloud infrastructure that we have today. Now we have wide broadband networks everywhere. We have cloud everywhere. We can work from everywhere, access all of our information everywhere, and be able to connect to everybody everywhere. So 5-10 years ago, that was not possible, certainly not to the level that we have it today in pretty much most households. So all of those are the results of continued innovation in infrastructure that has allowed us to be able to do this very quickly and adapt to the situation today.
And just one more thing. I know, Brad, you want to get this going, but just to give you a sense of how Farhad factors into our ecosystem, and not only is does he oversee the Duddy Innovation Center of Excellence, DICE, at Notre Dame, but he sits in on our brainstorming session every Friday. We have a brainstorming session about innovation on Friday mornings. So he is very well integrated into what we're doing.
Wonderful, thank you. So following up on all of that, Brett, why don't I address this to you first? You've all been speaking a lot about the COVID-19 pandemic. I wonder if you could sort of reframe it in how you think it's affecting our students and their future prospects. What should they maybe be thinking about as they're preparing for their futures?
Sure. One of the really interesting things that's happening right now in kind of technology, but really in economic history, is the number of innovation platforms that we think are entering the marketplace right now. Right now, we think between gene sequencing, robotics and adaptive robotics, blockchain and cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, and then the advances in energy storage and battery technology, that you have 5 major platforms kind of entering the economic marketplace at the same time. And you have to go back 100 years to see a similar level of kind of economic technological foment. Then it was the internal combustion engine and the telephone and electricity were all kind of entering the marketplace at the same time. And you had huge business formation, lots of wealth being built, lots of productivity being delivered to the economy. And if you look at the kinds of people that succeeded then and the kinds of people that are succeed now, I think it's people that are able to grab from those different technological paradigms and then combine them. Like the fundamental innovations, if you think we have a very optimistic view of what's going to happen with autonomous taxis. Well, autonomous taxis are enabled by artificial intelligence. They're basically moving robots, and they require the energy storage battery technology in order to work. And so kind of so being kind of at least cross innovation in terms of your at least basic understanding of the way things can plug together, and then being able to kind of wrap a business idea around those innovations, I think is another kind of critical function in the economic marketplace, where they are so accessible. You can buy a 3D printer and you can print yourself a little gadget, and then if you can figure out how to sell it, suddenly you can spin up a business and get to sufficient scale where then maybe you're injection molding it, or you can, and so they're so, at least at a first stage, accessible where you can begin building using them. Then the critical function begins to become, how do I, now that I can use this thing, create kind of like a business idea out of it? And so that's what, if you look at, there are people trying to like kind of subvert almost the traditional education trajectory, saying, oh, just quit school, don't go to college, just learn to code. In some ways that's attractive. In some ways, to me, it seems actually a little bit dangerous if you then specialize in a single domain. Like there's no guarantee that actually the kind of software 1.0 coding that people are going into doesn't itself get kind of upturned by the way artificial intelligence is working. So I'm a strong, like, both by my educational background and then my belief in how we train analysts, it's like you learn by doing, and also you learn to learn, right? And so you learn to like take these things and puzzle piece them together, and then you learn to kind of like deploy them into the world in some meaningful way. And so, I like having like a breadth of things that I touch and then try to put them together and see if I can make them kind of operate in some way.
Excellent. And yes, Farhad?
Let me also add something here that perhaps is more touchable for our students, okay? And that is, crisis will happen all the time. This is not going to be the last crisis in our lifetime or their lifetime, for sure. What history has told us that during the crisis and in the aftermath of the crisis, many things happen. Many new innovations come to life. In as much as the crisis is painful, it creates the environment for growth, for opportunities. So again, giving examples that matches our students' lifespan, both Uber and Airbnb came out of the last economic crisis. Before that, the notion of someone traveling to a city and staying at someone's home, stranger's home, was like ludicrous. This is not possible. Who will ever do that? And then right after that crisis, that became very common. People all became immediately, both in terms of travelers and hosts, very comfortable with the notion of being or staying with a stranger. And Uber the same way. So that situation, as much as it was painful, it led to the growth of on-demand economy or sharing economy, the notions that they're not part of our life at all. And both of those have resulted in hundreds or thousands of other companies, millions of jobs, perhaps billions of dollars contributed to our GDP, just from those two that grew out of the last economic crisis. So this one will not be any different.
Thank you. And I know all of us today in this conversation have spoken about how the advent and the development of online platforms has made this all possible to weather this pandemic in a different way than ever before. And I can vouch for the fact that NDA has had a really successful transition to online or remote learning in a virtual learning environment. And I'll open this up to all three of you. How do you think distance learning is an example of innovation, specifically in schools? And how do you think this will impact the future of education overall? So, Kathy, would you start?
I'm probably the least qualified to answer this question. We've got both Brett and Farhad. How is it? I really do believe. Maybe I'll step back and say, I never thought that that ARC would ever be in a situation where we wouldn't need to come into the office to do our work and collaborate. We set up our work, we set up ARC very openly, very few offices. I'm plopped right in the middle of research and trading and so forth, because I wanted to foster collaboration. Since this crisis, we have been online every day, and every morning, everyone in the firm gets involved. This actually has helped us collaborate and coordinate throughout the firm even more effectively when we're online. You can't all get into one room, but we are able to get into one room online. And so the bonding that has taken place and the collaboration that has taken place has been magnificent. I'm going to leave the future of education to the educators or would-be educators.
Let's go to Brett second.
Sure. I mean, I think I think structurally the system of education is likely to be shaken up by this in some perhaps profound ways. Like the higher education, I think there may be for some higher education institutions some question as to their viability. Because there's, if you think about the constraints on student body attendance at an MIT or even a very other good private schools, if they switch over into an online format and they can figure out how to do that effectively, then they can actually meaningfully expand kind of the population of students that they serve. And so then it means that the kind of lower tier schools potentially have a hard time attracting students. So that's one thing. I do think there's a lot of benefit to being in person with people. Like I miss having personal contact with people, and I do hope that at some time we get back to being able to be in person together. But it could be that kind of the in-person event becomes like the less frequent thing, and the not in-person kind of interactions is kind of the status quo. The expensive, like in the corporate world, we have offsites, right? Where it's like, you do that as like, you get out of the office in order to like all meet and socialize and stuff. Well, maybe it becomes, you're usually out of the office and then you have on-sites as like the special kind of social event. And so there may be just a turning around of kind of how we organize ourselves or, in collaboration. And so, and I think there are really profound questions about schools and private schools and what does the fall look like and how do we get back to kind of normal curriculum. But like, as Farhad mentioned, these arbitrary constraints that get put on you in a crisis often produce really profound new understandings of how to do things and a really interesting opportunities. Like lots of great art comes out of having an arbitrary constraint placed on you. Lots of new ways of doing things happen because, this old way that I was doing it over and over and over again, that I kept doing because it was status quo, because my inertia is so heavy. Now, as I like step back and say, well, how do we want to structure curriculum? Is it really worth everybody spending an hour and a half in the car to get to this one spot, and then an hour and a half back? That seems kind of like we should embed all of that time cost and potential health cost of that in-person meeting into the meeting. So it has to be a really meaningful in-person event for it to be justified. And so I think that's the direction things are going to go. Who knows what the final form looks like.
And Brett, when you mentioned the possibility of on-site work together being the exception rather than the norm, it reminds me of the advent of flipped classrooms that started to take traction in the last 5 years, where some teachers were filming their lessons, having students watch lessons at home, come into the classroom and be able to have one-on-one interaction with the teacher and with their classmates to work on the skills they were exposed to. So that's an interesting way to think about workplaces. And Farhad,
Right.
you've been able to experience teaching in the high school environment, online, remote teaching. And what are your thoughts on K through 12 education after this time?
Sure. So distance learning is not new, right? We've had it for decades, okay? But it's what we call asynchronous. There is no connection. There is no interaction, right? Somebody records something and some people watch it some other time. Today we have live distance learning, or synchronous as we call it, which means there is a lot of interaction, okay? Everything that we were able to do in a physical classroom, just about that, we are able to do in a virtual world. Not only that, we can also easily divide students into groups and let them go work on a topic and then come back and present to the whole class, which is very novel, very useful. In the past, we were able to do that as well, but not to this level. And I also teach at UCLA, and it's the same situation. Students are becoming more and more participating in this method of learning. And my suspicion is that in the future, educators will have to develop a curriculum, perhaps as a norm for distance learning, and then see if they can adapt it to in-class education. So I think distance learning, or especially the live method, will have to become more of a norm than an exception. And I tell you, it's like a production. You have to have many things prepared, you and perhaps the teaching assistant, to make sure you're delivering the entire message within the given time using a camera, which is interesting, which we think it's here, but it's a different way of educating, which I'm sure educators have to adapt to and make that more of a norm than an exception.
Thank you all. And I'll shift directions for a second, and I'd like to address Kathy to ask, how do you think your experiences when you were a student at NDA helped to prepare you to pursue a career in this really unusual and really new field of innovation?
Well, I took, in terms of electives, I tended to focus more on the sciences when that choice was possible. So that's I think the first. I also think that Notre Dame was exceptional when it came to writing, teaching students how to write, which also is involved in teaching students how to think. So I remember when I started ARC, I think many people were surprised that I, the CEO, would not let anything go up on our site without editing it first. And it was because of the fundamentals, and I really learned them at Notre Dame. I believe that writing and the clarity associated with good writing is also very helpful to critical thinking. I think they go hand in hand. And I think with the Facebooks and the Twitters and all the abbreviated and emojis, I think that art is, and I'm seeing this, the students out of the finest schools in the world, I'm seeing an inability to write in the way that I'm describing. At ARC, they learn very quickly because I think it's so important. I also think that, again, Notre Dame is a Catholic school. I am grateful that I was born with the gift of faith, but I also think going through the school, I developed an understanding of the Trinity and importantly, the Holy Spirit, the advocate. My father also focused very importantly on the Holy Spirit. as our guide. This is our guide through life. And I think, so the curriculum, very important. I also, at the end of my freshman year, I was awarded something at the time. It no longer exists. It was called the Best Fouts Award. And it was for an outstanding student for the, and it provided tuition for the sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge in terms of motivating me even more. Maybe too much. I needed to get straight A's on everything, and I don't think that's healthy either. But it really was, wow, hard work can really pay off. Hard work can really pay off. And it made such a huge difference to my parents, who were putting 4 children at the time through Catholic schools. And that was a huge drain on their budget. So the fact that I, a freshman going into sophomore year, could help, that was huge. I think the third and these last 2 are maybe a little bit on the lighter side, but nonetheless important. So there is, and I believe Notre Dame still has this, one girl is named friendliest every year in each class, right?
Yes, we still do.
Yes, and so I didn't get in my freshman year, but it was a competition, and I was going to go for it. And so I did get it, and I feel that it made me, really want to befriend many people and really understand where they were coming from, instead of keeping my head down and just in the books, which is also very important in terms of this idea of collaboration, which is becoming ever so more important today because of what we just discussed. I also I served in a number of political offices at the school, including school president, and that certainly helped me understand what it took to be a leader, especially with a lot of different constituencies. And in the time, this was the 70s, and there were you just have to have grown up in the 70s to know how many constituencies there were and how radical some people wanted to be. So that was also important. I think that the school just generally, and this has to do with the curriculum, with writing, with the way it's run, especially with Lillian now, and you, Brad, as well. I think developing a sense of what's possible, using the imagination. I mean, it was very rudimentary when I was going there, but the DNA was there. And I think Lillian and you and the administration have taken this many, many steps forward. And I know you've done amazing job with the robotics program, the rocket program, and now with DICE, the Duddy Innovation Center. So, the sense of wonder, just imbuing that in the students with that, I think is critical. Inspiring them is critical. So I got a lot of that, but because of new technologies and new ways of teaching, I think Notre Dame today is fostering ever so much more of it.
Well, to follow up on a couple things you mentioned, you said that scholarship was so important to you as a student. So it's full circle that you've been offering scholarships to our students for a number of years here, even before the DICE was opened up. So that's a beautiful testament to the impact it had on you.
Yeah, if alums are looking at this.
Exactly.
I started the scholarship program once I moved to New York City. I started the scholarship program. So that was in the early 80s. And yes, it's been, you have to give it back in some way. Education is so important. And I feel very privileged, honestly, that I've been able to do it. I've been very fortunate, to have had a wonderful career that would enable me to do it. So
Well, I
yes.
remember reading the names of those scholarship winners each year, long before I got to know who you were and before we started this Innovation Center. And my second follow-up is, you mentioned the Friendliest Student Award, and I can guarantee you and all the alums who may be listening that our Friendliest Student Award is still supremely popular, and the girls are so supportive of whoever they've nominated and selected to win the award. So it may seem anachronistic, but it is such a beautiful testament to the spirit of community and kindness here at NDA still.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have one more formal question for you all, and then sort of just a wrap up for you all. The formal question is simply, why do you think that it's important to expose the young women at the high school level to industries of the innovation world? Maybe let's go backwards from Farhad to Brett to Kathy.
Sure. So it is very clear that the jobs of the future and also the workplaces of the future will be very different from what we had 10 years ago or even today. Okay, so Art talks about the 5 innovation platforms. These platforms will cover all jobs, all sectors. Nothing will be excepted. Let's say, so most people will think science and engineering will be very much filled with innovation, and that is true, but it's not limited to that. Let's say somebody wants to become a lawyer. So 5 years from now, I mean, this trend has already started. Artificial intelligence will be a big part of law, a big part of reading and editing contracts. If we will be able to do it much better and much faster than a normal lawyer would be ever able to do that. Or let's say someone who wants to work in nonprofit, in social sciences, social activities. Okay, so it is highly possible that blockchain technology will be a very big part of anything that we want to do social. So by understanding those technologies or those innovations today, girls will be ready for tomorrow's jobs. And as I said, it's not just the job function, it's also the type of the organization. Okay, so let's look at this pandemic. The companies and organizations that were able to adapt quickly to change the way they operate, to change their work processes, and adapt to doing this virtually are thriving. So that's the lesson. Future organizations will not be that different. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to be dynamic and find opportunities and even threats and change the way you work, change the way you operate so that you're prepared for that. The sooner our children, our young adults get prepared and educated in this methodology, in this way of work, the better off they'll be for the future. Okay? And the sooner we start is that, of course, at the high school level. And I'm proud to be part of this trend, this center that started with Kathy to help young girls, young women at Notre Dame Academy to get to that level.
Thank you. Brett, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I endorse everything Farhad said. And I think that innovation, it's not only the way economies are going to grow and be run, it's also the way the world is going to change for the better. So, I think it's really valuable to think of yourself as trying to put a dent in the universe in some way. And these are, the hammers and nails by which you dent the universe. Like, we think, if you look at our forecast for a single company, Tesla, we believe it over 5 years will be responsible for more greenhouse gas emission reduction than the entire rest of the US, given what the US Energy Agency thinks US greenhouse gas reductions are going to be. And so why? It's because Tesla is pushing forward basically electric vehicles and autonomous robotaxis. And so all of the kind of everybody else, like, oh, how do we do this? This is such an impossible problem. The way you do it is you put your shoulder to, behind innovation and you push, and you're learning how to push, learning how to understand the mechanics of it, learning how to be a lawyer where if your AI system isn't working the way that you want it to, you can kind of pull back the cover and look inside and say, oh, well, if I just do this a little bit better, then this will be this much better. Having an understanding of the tools that you're going to be using, no matter what area you go into, writer, teacher, lawyer, social worker, anything, having an understanding of those tools actually allows you to adapt the tools better for you and make a bigger impact on the world. Be a better doctor, be a better lawyer, be a better educator. And so kind of I really like that Kathy brought up writing, because that's such a fundamental, important skill, not the mechanics of writing, but because it's a mechanism by which you organize how you think. Well, these are mechanisms by which you take what you think and you amplify them into the world. And so, get yourself an amplifier. Like, that's really what you want to do. And so to get an amplifier, you need to learn how it works. And so that's why you need to, grapple with it and get invested in it.
So Kathy, when Brett mentioned putting a dent in the world, it reminds me of Notre Dame Academy's mission to educate young women to make a difference.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people are puzzled about the dearth of women in areas of innovation, Silicon Valley, elsewhere. I think one of the reasons that is the case is they're not inspired early enough. They aren't. And, in college, college is too late. It's just too late. I'm not saying for everyone, this is not a blanket statement, but if you can inspire a young person in middle school or high school, I've learned from, the just starting ARC and bringing young people in, the energy, the burst of energy around that inspiration. I want to make a difference. I want to help change the world and make it a better place. In Brett's words, I want to dent the universe. You're going to see those sparks if as Farhad and others, because I know this is a much broader school effort, are teaching and collaborating around this notion of innovation. They are going to spark, I believe, in various students at different times, something that inspires them to say, I want to do that. I want to do that. And to develop that passion, that aha moment. I call in our big ideas, our brainstorms every Friday, I'm looking for aha moments, more from an investment point of view and a research point of view and everything. But I think in education, you want your students to say, wow, I want to do that. I want to do that. And then they're on course. I see so many young people, and even in my own family broadly, where, they get out of college and they're just trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. They're going to take a sales job or something where they can use all their skills, but they weren't inspired to do that at any point. If you can inspire at this young age, and it's such an impressionable age. I remember when we were launching the Duddy Innovation Center for Excellence, or it was around that time, and it was for parents and students and prospective students. I remember there was a line of young girls. It wasn't even their parents. This is when parents were there. Young girls came up to me. I could tell we had them, so you have to inspire them at this early age. And I think Notre Dame is going about this in the right way. Now consider the source, DICE, but I really do believe this is the right thing to do.
Well, Kathy, as Lillian has shared with you many times before, your influence is not only in the Duddy Innovation Center of Excellence, but it's permeated the campus in many ways, to the extent even that the elementary and middle school this year opened up an innovation lab, so that the younger students are being exposed to design thinking and invention and innovation. So it's pretty exciting to see all the ways that it's permeated our campus.
Exciting.
So lastly is just a general question to you each. And once again, I'll ask Farhad, Brett, and Kathy to share. Do you have any advice to leave our viewers and listeners with in this really strange place we find ourselves in during this time of pandemic?
Yes. So it's okay to be in crisis. It's okay to face uncertainty. It's okay to be challenged. It's okay to have to change the ways we educate, the ways we live, the ways we work. All of that is okay. At the end of it, we'll be more resilient, we'll be more flexible, In some areas, we will perhaps grow beyond if nothing has changed, if there was no crisis. And at the end, as I said, we come up better than when we went into this crisis. So that's the lesson of most crises. And this is not going to be the last crisis for us. We will have others. There could be pandemics, there could be economics, there could be many other reasons that we'll have crisis. And what we learn today allows us to be stronger for future crises. I also want to add one other thing. One of the characteristics of innovative organizations is their ability to change, the speed and the quality that they go through to change. And as such, Notre Dame Academy has proved itself. So even though talk about innovation and Kathy's initiative is probably 3 years old, and it's certainly not limited to DICE, to the place that I work, the entire school has embraced this. And that's the result of that is what you see, that within a few days, we switched from in-class education to online education seamlessly. And everybody got completely on board, and it's like nothing has changed. So that's where Notre Dame Academy is, and we're just going to grow more and more after this. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
For me, as a parent of young kids, and maybe speaking to some parents, it can feel really frantic sometimes. And so kind of I have been trying to just be a combination of extremely present tense, like this is the moment that we're in, anything that's happened, it's already happened and you are in this moment. And then also to operate by, when you're really seasick, right? What do? You look at the horizon, right? And that settle, because that's the steady thing that's out there. And so in some ways you have to accept what we're doing and then look at what is the medium term thing that's going to happen here. What are the, how am I going to use this to build kind of change potentially my own lifestyle choices about having, a lot of dinners with families is actually really nice, and having, even though the cleanup is not so nice and the preparation of it all is, I could do without some of that, but like those shared moments that you're forced into, particularly if you have a teenager, it's like, this might be your chance to spend, enforced time with a teenager. That can be, a really treasured thing in the midst of all of this tumult and uncertainty and, sometimes heartrending things occurring. And so, it's a combination of like, you're just in the moment that you're in, and, there is a horizon out there that we're all heading towards. And there's actually profoundly optimistic things that are going to occur between here and there. And so there are lots of things to grieve, but then there's lots to be hopeful about and to really look forward to. And so that's how I operate in the world.
Thanks, Brett. And finally, Kathy.
Yes, I'm going to focus more on the educational side and maybe talking to parents and students. But I think the message here is whatever kind of innovation was in the pipeline has just been turbocharged. And what's great about innovation and students who are moving in the direction of innovation is they can get out of school and be the experts, because guess what? Those, even let's talk about in the medical field, those in the medical field who are the seasoned professionals and the experts and the leaders, they have never experimented with CRISPR gene editing. Well, the students who are going to be getting out now will have done that. And it's true with every other kind of innovation we've talked about. You can, if you put your head down, really focus, you're inspired, put your head down, focus, develop the expertise, become the expert, look for mentors as well. My mentor is Art Laffer. He got me into my first job. People who are in research, focused on innovation, hitch your wagon to some of those experts. And I think as Brett said, you're going to be on the right side of change, and the changes that are happening really are. It sounds trite, really are going to make the world a better place. And what I know about young people today is that's what they want to do. They want to be a part of something big. They want to be a part of something transformational. And so get on the right side of change. It's just been turbocharged. And Notre Dame is pointing the way and is there to serve as a source of inspiration.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being part of this panel today. I think we've wrapped up our time. Kathy, stay safe back east, and Farhad and Brett, stay safe here in LA. Thanks again.
Thank you, Brad. Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Brett and Farhad.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for your insight. I would also like to take a moment to thank Kathy for her generous $50,000 match to support the Making a Difference Scholarship. Now, to discuss their own experiences with innovation, are current NDA students taking the Disruptive Innovation course.
Hello everyone, my name is Kathy Crossan, class of 2022. This is my first year taking Disruptive Innovations, and I would like to share about our class. Innovation is everywhere you look. Our class focuses on its role in changing our future. Specifically, we study businesses that have disrupted the world we live in. Some that have failed, but others that have succeeded, from an energy drink to a social companion robot to a medical device that scans for brain damage. We've even looked at a restaurant that only sells dessert, my personal favorite. After we look at each case, we each create group presentations and discuss with each other to enhance our learning. I thoroughly enjoy working with my classmates and listening to their ideas as we collaborate. When we all bring our ideas to the table, the solution is better and so is our product. Even though our method of communication has moved online, we are continuing to work on our final project. Working interdependently has helped me connect with more of my NDA sisters from my own class, but also other grades. The Duddy Innovation Institute has helped me develop innovative thinking, a creative approach to solving problems, and critical thinking. I feel empowered to use these skills and in the future, make a difference in the world.
Hi, I'm Elba Pirio, a sophomore here at NDA, and I am currently participating in the Disruptive Innovation class. The Innovation Institute provides an outstanding and enjoyable opportunity to explore our quickly developing world. We explore various companies, businesses, technologies, and products, and then have the opportunity to use our new knowledge to create our own products. It is inspiring to meet with entrepreneurs who have a strong passion for business and development, and also provide insight into the foundations of companies and future career options. I enjoy the intriguing and stimulating group discussions on relevant topics or events and analyzing and learning from previous business cases. The Disruptive Innovation class connects learning and hands-on activity from ice cream truck simulations to breaking down the parts of both successful and failed businesses or products to ultimately channel into our own developments and ideas. The Innovation Institute has provided an excellent opportunity to embrace creativity and to develop communication and critical thinking skills.
Thank you for joining us in Hour 3. Tune in to see our Where Are They Now segment in Hour 4. Alumni, you may want to tune in for this very special segment.